How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we have a quick hitter of a video to get into to start today, that being on March 22nd, 2025. And in case you're wondering why exactly is that, that's because news has dropped over the past hour at the time of recording this one, right before I get set to leave for Manhattan, where I'm going to be spending the entire day and hitting the Knicks game tonight with some good friends. So really looking forward to that. But before we get there, let's get into the latest Mets news from Mets skipper himself and Carlos Mendoza, giving us an inside look at pretty much what we can expect the Mets opening day roster to be, which is now just mere days away. Let's hear from Mendy and what he has to say.
Some move. Chris Zavensky, who's told that he's not making the team. Genesis Cabrera, who's told he's not making the team. Jackson Reeds, and Donovan Walton, and Urania. So those guys were informed that they are not making the team and they will go into AAA.
Does that mean Baty, Acuña, and Sanger are on the team?
Nope. And that's probably going to go till the last day, before we have to make that decision, Some of them they're going to come up to Houston, and they probably won't find out till, the day before. So, and they know that now, too, so.
Has anybody been told that they made the team on that bubble?
Rick Garrett, Jose Burro, and Danny Young. I told those three yesterday, so.
Were they on the bubble?
No, but I think I think that's the first time for them making an opening day out of spring training. That means a lot. So I brought him in the office and told him that.
So let's start with the bullpen reaction, and then we will get into the Acuña, the Baty, the Walton stuff, because while Mendy can sit there and say confidently no right away in response to, the stats and them for their roster for opening day, that's reading through the lines. This is no different than when Mendy can't talk about Pete Alonso yet because the signing hasn't been official from a couple months ago when he was brought back to the Mets on that one-year deal with the second-year option. Or Jose Urena, when Mike Pumas asked him about Urena, and he pretty much can't say anything yet just because it's not official. The Mets have it unofficially official what the roster is going to be, and we know exactly what it is. I'm going to deep dive that for you all in just a second, but let's start off with the key remarks here on the bullpen front. As we know, Reed Garrett makes endless sense as to why he's back in this Mets bullpen. That doesn't come as a surprise, but now to see obviously Danny Young cracking this Mets bullpen is maybe a little bit of a surprise to some, but it became more likely over the past week and a half that Young was going to best Genesis Cabrera for that final lefty spot in the Mets bullpen, not named AJ Minter, because AJ Minter is the high leverage lefty option that they have, but they want a low leverage option as well, a guy that can be utilized in various situations against lefty-lefty matchups, while Cabrera, in my opinion, has more upside from what we saw last year and throughout his respective career there, where the Blue Jays was more than capable in just under 70 innings for them last year with a 3.5 or so ERA. The expected numbers weren't great. He's a ground ball merchant, obviously, and doesn't strike out a lot of guys, but has solid velocity as a lefty. But Cabrera is not starting the year in this Mets bullpen because Danny Young is, and Young had the one-up while pitching in just under 40 innings for the Mets last year, posted a 4.5 ERA with the expected ERA not any better. The K per 9 was strong at almost 12, but the walks per 9 was just under 5. So the walk rate is something that needs to be handled with Danny Young, and Young is more of that true soft-tossing southpaw, which is why I don't love the aspect of him in every matchup. I think Cabrera gives you more diversity with not only his diverse arsenal as a pitcher, but also the velocity that comes along with his fastball and sinker, versus a guy here that we have in Young, where, again, love the sweeper, love the late movement, and again, that leads to the nice swing and miss, the bite that he's had last year with the Mets, but I will not be shocked if we see Genesis Cabrera called up in the first half of the year with Danny Young being sent down in the process. I think the Mets are going to give looks to both these guys naturally throughout the course of the year, and depending on what happens with them in the DFA waiver wire area, we'll find out, because Young no longer has options. As we know, Cabrera will be starting the year in AAA barring changes, as is the case with Jose Urena. Urena, obviously, who got beat up in one of the games I actually attended for the Mets in spring training a week and a half ago or so, where he's just giving up doubles galore. It felt like Urena, who was a late signing this spring by the Mets, that we know because they wanted a true swingman option after both Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea went down with an injury. Urena, who posted a sub-3 ERA in 64 2/3 innings for the Rangers last year as a reliever, otherwise pretty solid as both a starter and reliever, and Jose Urena with late movement, but obviously can be hanging his pitches plenty that we've seen. So Urena starting the year in AAA, but a guy that will probably get reps for the Mets at some point in the first half of the year. Don't be surprised if you see it happen. Chris Davensky, who the Mets are stretching as a starter for the first time among many but the Mets have a lot of options right now, and I actually apologize. Davinsky's not who I meant to say is being stretched as a starter. That's Justin Hageman, if I'm not mistaken. Davinsky, though, is more of that true reliever type, but he did not crack the roster, nor did that we saw in Donovan Walton and Jackson Reitz. And that gets into our greater discussion here, everybody, because we can sit here and say, oh, Baty, Acuña, etc., Sanger, are they making the roster or not? And we have cold-faced Mendoza right away, not giving you a clear-cut answer. It's obvious. Unless the Mets acquire someone via trade or acquire someone through the waiver wire, through the DFA reign, when you have someone maybe like a Tomas Nido, if he doesn't crack the Detroit Tigers roster, that is a route where I could see the Mets acquiring someone externally as their backup catcher to start the year, with late cuts happening, obviously, for all teams right now up until all their respective opening days, not named the Dodgers and the Cubs that we saw back in Tokyo over the past week. So, in the case of these guys, I think it's important that we see over the next couple of days leading up to the Mets' first official game in Houston, what they do with their roster. But when looking at the infield, it is abundantly clear. It's Luisangel Acuña and Brett Baty. Unless the Mets really acquire someone that we're not talking about right now that makes endless sense for this team, that ship has sailed. The Nick Madrigal experiment came and went as soon as it started. The Donovan Walton experiment thankfully died out when the Mets realized that, wow, Brett Baty and Luisangel Acuña clearly look like better options here. Not that Walton's a terrible player, but he's also not really an MLB caliber player and hasn't been throughout his entire career over the past 5 to 10 years. So why should we think that now is anything different? Versus Acuña showed what he showed in his limited sample size last year. Baty has done everything that we've seen, just hasn't had the consistency at the major league level. Baty currently leads all the Grapefruit League in OPS, which is a big deal, versus spring last year, he didn't succeed nearly as much. So maybe this is a trend in the right direction for Brett. In the case of Acuña, he's done pretty much everything you could ask for to display with his, not only his defensive versatility and ability, his speed on the bags, but as well as the bat-to-ball skills, in which he's had some quality games for the Mets this spring training. So with the injury to Jeff McNeil, given the Mets' current infield configuration, given their options, unless something drastic happens from right now up until they have their first game in Houston, fully expect and now have yourself be excited that Brett Baty and Luisangel Acuña are going to be on this roster together. They're going to be platooning there at second base based on matchups, and you're going to see them get plenty reps there up until McNeil comes back with injury, and the Mets decide things further from there. So that's very exciting. What's also exciting is knowing that we have potentially a homegrown story here at the backstop position, because if the Mets do not bring in Tomas Nido, and they don't sign a guy out there that is currently available in the free agent market, like a real grizzled veteran and like the 40-year-old Yan Gomes or the Yasmani Grandals if he hasn't landed anywhere yet, or the Christian Vasquez's of the world, should those things not happen, everything is now in line for Hayden Sanger to make this Mets team. A man who's been in the Mets organization since 2018, mind you. Yeah, one of the longest tenured players in the Mets organization. I'm not shocked to see that, as I remember Sanger being a catcher every spring. It feels like the past north of a decade. He's been in this organization for a while that we've seen. He's been deemed by many as one of the best defensive backstops across all minor league baseball, and has a good familiarity and a good rapport with this Mets pitching staff, having worked with them in previous years to a degree, as well as the work that he did yet again this spring. So unless the Mets acquire someone externally, Hayden Sanger will officially be the Mets' backup catcher for Luis Torrens to begin the regular season. While I have my reservations with that for a guy who hasn't been in the bigs at all, and I don't expect anything offensively, I know that in the case of a backup catcher especially, you're really just looking for defense, and that's what Sanger should be able to provide for you. So hopefully we get exactly that. But now that we have seen the story when it comes to the Mets and their infield options, with Donovan Walton officially being sent down, paving the way for both Brett Baty and Luisangel Acuña, let's talk just for a minute here on the bullpen, because with the large assumption and belief that Tyler McGill and Griffin Canning will be in this Mets rotation, the Mets will then have 3 bullpen spots for the following players: and Huascar Brazaban, Paul Blackburn, we have Danil Nunez, AJ Minter, and there's probably one more that I'm missing. Let me make sure to see if I did or not. I'm going to double check right here, everybody. I apologize. Just making sure I have everything right in my notes, because I don't want to miss it. I'm pretty sure I have them all. And Max Kranick, of course, my guy Max. Yeah, I would have been upset if I missed that, for example. Shout out to you, Anthony DeComo. We appreciate it. But here's the thing. With those 3 spots open, the Mets are going to go as follows. Max Kranick will be one of those bullpen spots. That is an absolute lock now. And then the big question is the health of AJ Minter and Danil Nunez. Given that Nunez has barely pitched this spring, I would expect Danil Nunez to probably start the year not with the Mets. It won't be long before he's with the Mets, but it also wouldn't shock me if he starts the year a little late with the Mets. AJ Minter, as you guys see right down there, today he is expected to pitch. So we'll see how he pitches later today, obviously, his spring game that'll break down. If not later tonight, then certainly tomorrow on the platform. And then we have Griffin Canning getting to start tomorrow too, per Michael Mayer there, a Mets Mirage. But everything is now aligning for the Mets bullpen to be wrapped up with the following pitchers: Max Kranick, Paul Blackburn, if the Mets feel committed to really utilizing him as that swingman type. And then you're going to have probably AJ Minter. I think AJ cracks this team out of camp, honestly. But let's just say worst scenario happens and AJ Minter and Danilo Nunez both don't start the year with the Mets and their bullpen. Okay, what does that do? It completely opens the door for Blackburn, Kranick, and Huascar Brazovan. Brazo, who will be impacting this Mets bullpen positively this year, I think has boxed himself out, at least to begin the year, because of what the Mets have been seeing in spring training. I think that they would like to work a little bit more with him. That makes sense because they have a lot of quality options for their bullpen now, which is great to see. And Brazovan will be a quality reliever for them this year, but it wouldn't shock me if he starts the year in the minor leagues, especially knowing that he does have one final minor league option, if I'm not mistaken, so be on the lookout for that. But Minter, should he be healthy enough, I'd expect him, Blackburn, and Kranick, and if both are down, then it'll be Blackburn, Kranick, and Brazovan. When it comes to the rotation, we know what that's going to be. Obviously, it's going to be Canning, it's going to be McGill, unless something drastically changes, unless the Mets hate what they get from Tyler McGill's latest spring outing today, in which he is towing the rubber. Outside of that, I'm feeling pretty confident this is what we'll be getting for the Mets official roster for opening day, just a couple days away. But Mets fans, I want to know your initial reactions to the official roster reveal, the unofficial official roster reveal here by Carlos Mendoza. He's not fooling anybody. Again, unless an external move happens, everything that I just relayed to you, everybody, is now a reality. Acuña and Baty will be on this roster, and the bullpen configuration will be one or two of the scenarios I just alluded to in hand with the tweet beside me from Anthony Como. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. It really does mean a lot. Let me know all your key takeaways in the comments down below. What player are you most excited about with the assumption that they are now on this roster for 2025? What player are you, least hyped up about? And which one that will currently start there in the minor leagues do you have most optimism with at some point throughout the year? Because as I didn't mention yet, I'll say it now, Tyler Zuber was one of the final cuts for the Mets bullpen as of yesterday. Another guy that'll be positively impacting their bullpen, I'm sure, at some point this year. It's just a matter of when. Thank you guys again for watching. I'll see you all tonight live at Madison Square Garden, and live and saying that I'll be there, but not in the sense that I'll be doing a live show unless breaking news happens there, which I did do a live show in the past there with Adam Ottavino re-signing with the Mets a year plus ago back in January when I was at a Knicks Heat game. So we'll see what happens. Until then, folks, have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. This is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Peace out, folks.